See the weight you carry, it's written in your eyes, the kind of ache that takes up every corner of your mind. You're sitting in the silence, drowning in the doubt. I've been sitting there before, I know there's a way out. The world feels like it's caving in. Those dark thoughts, don't let them win. Just stay. Just stay. I know it's almost more than you can take. Please just stay. I swear the light will find you someday, and you'll be glad you stayed. So just stay.
Thank you, everybody, for being here with us again for another episode of Just Stay. We are so excited to have Shaylee with us to tell her story. Shaylee has been an early supporter of the podcast, and I was so excited when you reached out to us. So we're excited to have you here with us this week to share a story. Shaylee, why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, so I grew up in Rigby. I've lived here most of my life. I'm 19 years old. I just finished my first year at college in Montana. I grew up playing softball my whole life, and so I went and played college softball. And then I ended up joining the track team there too, which was fun. And I like to sing. I'm the oldest. I have 3 younger brothers. My dad's a police officer, so I enjoy seeing my dad help people. And so that kind of influenced me to want to do lots of service. So serving others. I went to Madison High School and I graduated in 24, so not this last year, but the year before. I like to change my hair a lot. I will chop it. I will dye it different colors.
What was it like growing up with 3 younger brothers? Because when you were just talking, I was like, holy crap, we have so much in common. Like, I have 3 younger brothers. My dad was in the army, so I grew up, seeing him, serve our country just like your dad does. So I can really relate to that. But what was it like for you growing up, not only the oldest child, but having brothers?
So I think as a kid, it was kind of hard. I had perfectionism. And so growing up with 3 younger brothers who were always in and out of the house, just playing with their friends. And my mom was sick a lot when I was growing up. And so I I didn't babysit them, but it was just kind of me in the living room and keeping an eye on my brothers. But so I didn't always have 3 younger brothers. I guess I had 2 when I was growing up. And then 4 years ago, we adopted my brother Carter, and he is 12 now. And we fostered him and his brother for a little bit. So at one point we had 4 boys in the house, and just lots of when your house is messy, it shows that you live in it. So there was a lot of that. And I think my brothers it kind of made me tough.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of tough love, I guess, but I also am a very empathetic person, and I think that was part of seeing my brother Carter, seeing where he came from, and just with his situation and how the process worked of loving somebody and then they had to leave for a little bit and then fighting for them so they could come back. I also, when I was 9, I got in an accident, and that's kind of what started all my anxiety that I've dealt with for the last few years. And I feel like that kind of made me a scared person. I was very scared. So after I'd say like that accident, I was very timid around my brothers and things that they'd want to go do. I wouldn't ride horses anymore, and I was scared to get in a car and wear necklaces. And so I think as I got from middle school aged, I was more of a cautious person versus my brothers were just wild and crazy and they had fun. But I guess growing up, it was not the easiest for me.
Yeah. Do you mind sharing with us? I mean, I know that's obviously a big part of the reason you're here, but just kind of how your journey with your mental health started.
Yeah. So like I said, when I was 9, I got in an accident. I was playing at the playground and there was like these fiberglass tubes and one of them had collapsed on my neck while I was playing in it. So I ended up tumbling under it somehow and my neck was trapped between the beam and the tube. And I just like remember passing out and getting to the point where I was like getting to my last breath. And then my neighbor, he was able to lift the tube off and we called 911. I got to the hospital and had a lot of surgeries happen. And then after that, I had to start counseling. So I was scared to eat meat. I hadn't eaten steak since a year ago because I was scared to choke on it. I wouldn't wear necklaces for the longest time because I was scared somebody would pull it and I would choke on it. I wouldn't wear turtlenecks. I was scared to get in cars because I was afraid of another accident. And then I also had to deal with the court side of things. So we had ended up suing the city and because it was their fault that the playground had collapsed while I was on it. And I think that that's when I started counseling, kind of preparing me to have to relive the moment at 10 years old and have to say exactly what happened. And I just remember there's a lot of people against me. It felt like I was like, I got hurt. Why are you against me? It's kind of what it felt like. And then after that, there was I'd say in middle school. I mean, a lot of people struggle in middle school, and I feel like that's a hard age. I feel like that's when mental health really starts for a lot of kids now, just because there's so many different groups and you feel like you have to fit in different places when in reality you don't. Like you fit in where you feel comfortable. But it was more of just trying to fit in what society thought. And so I would say that was a really hard time for me. So I've attempted to take my life 3 different times. The first time was in 7th grade. There was a lot of bullying going on, and there was a girl, and she had texted me and said that my life would be better off if I wasn't here. And with already struggling with my anxiety and now depression was starting, I felt very alone. And that's when I had attempted to take my life. I'd written my letter to my dad and my family, and I was in my room. And then as I was trying to hurt myself, what I was planning on doing, my dad had came in while I was in there, and he just came and hugged me, and we just cried, and he kind of talked me through what I was going through. I didn't really understand what I was going through. I just remember feeling all these emotions, and I was like, I don't want to feel these emotions. They're overwhelming. And that's when I wrote it on paper and just tried to stop it because, when you're hurt, you want the pain to stop. And so that's why I had tried to. And then I still struggled with anxiety and depression. So I'm diagnosed with major depression and panic attack disorder. So because of my accident and a lot more things that I'll talk about, I guess there's a lot of triggers that will happen, and I can't really control my panic attacks just because I haven't dealt with them the right way. And then with depression, kind of back in middle school, I would isolate myself, and I would I felt uncomfortable talking about it because no one talked about it. And so I think that's why it's important to talk about it, so it's more comfortable to talk about. Yeah, so I would be in my room a lot, and I would just sit there and your brain is very powerful and it can go two ways. You can think very positive about things, or you can think very negative about things. And so at that time, I was very negative. And then fast forward to freshman year of high school after I transferred. So I was still struggling, but I was excited for a new change. And so I transferred to Madison and things were going good. But then it felt almost like the same thing of having to find a new place to fit in, just a little more obstacles, I guess, with dating now and with social media. Like everyone had Snapchat and I wasn't allowed to at the time. And I was like, nobody will talk to me if I can't snap them, Mom. Like they don't want to talk to me. And she'd be like, no, I don't think it's a good idea. Like you need just text them. They'll answer you if they're your real friends. And I didn't believe her. So I would like, I just felt very alone, I guess, in that way because of how many kids had social media. And I had people telling me, like, oh, just what's your Snap? Let me get your Snap. And I'm like, oh, I don't have it. They're like, oh, okay. And they wouldn't bother to get a text my number because they don't ever look at their messages. And then it got to the point where I was struggling again with my depression, and I ended up trying to take my life again. That time I had reached out to my mom because I had been struggling with it for years. So she kind of was my comfort with that, and what I had tried didn't work. And so then I went to my mom, and she took me to the Behavioral Health Center in Idaho Falls. So it's a place where people who are struggling with anxiety, depression, drugs, alcohol, addiction kind of, and then just like with mental health, a place where you can go for weeks or days, however long you need, and you talk about your coping skills and your little toolbox. So we all need to have our own little toolbox with coping skills, and it could be deep breathing or imagery or the five senses. There's a lot of different coping skills you can have in your toolbox. And so it's kind of like learning how to cope with that and finding the right way to cope with my mental, the better way to cope with my mental health, because there's different ways for everybody. But I feel like at that point, that was it for me. And then obviously medications, like I'm on medications, and the hard thing with medication is that you're going through so many different ones to try to find the right medication for you, because your body's going to react to it differently and it's not going to work the same for everyone. Some people's depression might be higher or lower, and your anxiety will influence that and how the medications work for you. And so that also was kind of something we were looking into, and it had worked for a while, but I would say I still struggled with depression a lot in high school. But eventually my senior year, I I had a lot of friends that were exchange students, and that was my comfort place. And that was like, because they're people from different countries who love you for you, and they want somebody to be their friend, somebody who wants to help them and take them to football games and get to know them. And that, I feel like, was my biggest blessing my senior year. And it got really great until they all left and all my friends moved away at once. And that was so hard for me, because those are your best friends. Those are people you're with all the time. And I didn't get to see them anymore. And like, we could have never talk all the time together unless we all had busy lives on top of the time changes. And so then I think after that, I started struggling again with a depression episode. And then my anxiety got super bad. And then this last summer, so there was a case involving the FBI with my family that we didn't know about. And there was one morning they were banging on the door and telling us to open up, and it was 7. We were all sleeping still. My dad was already at work, and that's what woke me up. And I just remember like being frozen in my bed and feeling my fight, flight, or freeze. It's freeze. And so I just froze in my bed. I was like, someone else will answer it. I don't need to go answer the door. And then no one was answering, and I was scared they were going to kick the door down. So I went around the corner, but they had already opened it up and were coming in with guns. And I mean, like, just imagine like 5 guns pointed at you, and you're really confused. You just woke up and no one else is awake. And there was a police officer who was a family friend, and he ended up, for the last 6 years, had taken images of me and made child pornography and was sending them to a sex trafficker in Alabama, but he's pretending to be my mom in these emails that he's sending. So he's impersonating my mom and making images of me and was sending those. And there's lots of crazy things said in that email that you would never want to hear about your child. But during that whole week, they were so convinced that it was my mom who was doing all of these things to me. And I just remember feeling like so alone. And I was very angry with Heavenly Father because I was like, why are you letting this happen right after all my friends leave? I have no one to talk to. And they had taken all of our phones, so I couldn't call anybody. My mom wasn't allowed to be at the house, so I couldn't see her. Every single phone in our house was gone because they were trying to find these emails that weren't there because we weren't the ones creating them, but they were so convinced that it was my mom. And when they went to go, so they had taken us all in the morning to go get interviewed, and so they took me to the domestic violence place in Idaho Falls, and they interviewed me, and it felt very, like it was very similar to how you see it in TV where you're sitting down and it's just a one-on-one conversation and they're dropping all this crazy information on you. I had to look at images and identify them if that was my face or not, and so I had to see hundreds of pictures of pornography, which I did not like, especially because it was my face, and I was like, that's not me. They were so convinced it was me and convinced my mom was doing this that they were almost, they were like, Shaylee, you don't remember this happening? Like, this happened to you. You don't remember this person sexually assaulting you? This happened. And just being torn. Am I losing my mind? Or is this, like, how did this all come up? It just was so confusing. I'm like, how are all these images here, but I don't remember any of it? And so I felt very scared, and that's when I had a panic attack in that room. They had left, and I was all alone, and it was a small green room, and I had one pillow and was on the couch, and I was just crying and praying, and I was like, Heavenly Father, please help this to go away. This is the worst anxiety I've ever felt, and it was so confusing. And I took a lot of praying and a lot of waiting and patience, and finally the officer who ended up doing this to our family, he confessed that it was him because there were videos including him that he said was not him, but in the emails, but then somebody identified his body. And so then he confessed, and right now we're kind of going through the trial process with that. But that situation brought me so much anxiety and so many new triggers with my panic attacks that I didn't know I had until I went to college.
So these images that were shown to you, they weren't you at all.
No. So
It was a Photoshop.
Yeah, it was AI.
Okay.
It used AI.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
How traumatizing for you to see yourself. I just can't imagine being so confused.
Mm-hmm.
I am so sorry that happened to you.
I also have a hard time with crying. That's something I'm learning. I hide my emotions very low. And that's like, I've been a coping skill as a kid. So if I don't get emotional, it's not that I don't feel emotional, but I don't know how to feel my feelings yet. And I feel like that's something I'm still working on.
That's very much so a trauma response. And I think you go through phases of it. And then someday you'll feel everything, and then someday you'll feel nothing. So I'm glad that you're acknowledging that in yourself and that you can recognize it, because that alone is progress.
That's very emotionally aware of you. I'm so sorry. I know you're not even done with your story.
It's okay.
But when you were explaining how confusing it was, I've had many moments in my life where I've felt so like mentally like conflicted and things didn't make sense. And so I'm like putting myself in your shoes, and I can't even imagine. So I hope you feel validated and that you have every right to have those feelings. I mean, I just can't even imagine, but anyway, continue. We did not mean to.
No, you're good.
Stop your story. Okay.
So I ended up going to play college softball. That was something I had worked so hard on. You know, like with your son, you guys went to, was it the Czech Republic?
Dominican Republic.
Dominican. You guys went there and you were playing to get better. And all the effort and hours it takes to be where you want to be as an athlete. So I just want to, I guess, put that in perspective. And then, so I went to college and softball was great. I was playing, I was having fun, I was learning a lot of new things. And then my panic attacks started happening. So there was one practice we were scrimmaging, and I was on third, and I was in a pickle, and one girl bumped me in my helmet and with her glove, and it twisted my neck weird. And I know that I look back now and it was a panic attack triggered by my accident with my neck. And that's something I hadn't dealt with for a long time. So it's almost like you lose your breath, and you want to cry, but you don't know how to cry. You can't get your tears out and you can't get your breath out. And you have like not fun butterflies, but nervous butterflies, because you can't identify why you feel that way. And I think that's something I've also learned with panic attacks. You can't identify them all the time. And sometimes when people are like, what's going on? Are you okay? What do you need? I'm like, I don't know what I need, but that's making me feel more overwhelmed. I just need to process my thoughts. Because if your thoughts are racing and people are trying to talk to you, then it just adds more thoughts in your head and you're more stressed and overwhelmed. And so I guess the best thing to do in that situation, one of my teammates was one of my roommates also, and she knew what to do, but she just gave me a hug. And I relate very much to the part in Inside Out too, when she's like going around in a circle around joy and around the computer thing, and just so fast. And that's kind of how your emotions feel. Like you're angry, you're stressed, you're sad, you're scared, you just don't know what to feel. And then one person, they just need to give you a hug and it stops it all. Because your body focuses on what that feeling is, and it just gives you a second to breathe and actually feel what you're feeling without questioning what you're feeling. And so that's an example of a panic attack I had, and I started having them more frequently, and it was every day I was having one or two. Like, that's definitely not normal, and I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what to do. My parents were home, and I thought my medications were right, but obviously I needed a new change, and it got to the point where I couldn't handle it anymore. I had started counseling, and talking with her, she kind of helped me realize that I was burying all my emotions, and that's why they were still coming up. That's why I was still having panic attacks from an accident I had at 9 years old, or from the FBI case. Like, anytime I heard a bang or a softball hit the ground really hard, my heart would drop and I would start crying, because like I didn't know it reminded me, but my body was, you're in danger, you're in danger. And I would freeze. And so she kind of helped me realize I wasn't in touch with my emotions as much as I needed to be. And things, they were starting to get better. And then I had made some choices I wasn't very happy with, that I regretted making. At that point, I felt so guilty with myself and so angry. Not at the world, not at anyone else, but I was at myself. I was like, why would you do that? Like, you have your standards and you cross them. You're hurting yourself by doing that. And so that night, I had made up my mind that I was going to take my life, and I was going to follow through with it, and nothing was going to stop me. I felt like I didn't deserve to be alive. It's not that I didn't want to, but I felt so, like, all these new emotions with myself. And I was like, I don't deserve to be here. I don't want to be here. No, like, not nobody wants me, but I don't want me here. Because I felt so guilty, and so I felt like that, like I was standing out like a sore thumb, but I wasn't. I didn't know what I was standing out in, but I just didn't feel right. And so I had taken the car that I had at college, and I was already planning on dropping off my laundry at this lady's house in my ward, who I love dearly, and I had brought my clothes. She lives out in the boonies, and there was nothing around her house, just cliffs and long roads. And so I drove out there and I gave her my laundry, and she could tell something was wrong. And the sister missionaries were there too. And I was close with all of them. I had taught with those sisters a lot, and I was over at Ashley's house quite a bit just because it was my comfort place. And they could tell something was wrong, but I had already made up my mind that I didn't care to tell them. And so, Shaylee, are you doing okay? Like, something seems off. Yeah, I'm fine. I'm good. Um, and I feel like that's when I realized I'm not myself right now. I would never say that. And so looking back, I know that was the point where I turned completely where I was not supposed to go. And said I was fine and good, and then I would come get my laundry the next day, and so I left my clothes, and in my mind I was like, I'm not coming back. I already know that I'm not coming back. And so I gave him a hug, and I can say I hugged Ashley tighter than I ever had because I knew in my mind that was the last one. And so then I drove off, and instead of turning left to go back to college, I turned right to go in the middle of nowhere, and I was driving recklessly, and I was screaming, and I was so angry, and I didn't know how to handle the emotions I was feeling. And I went to go drive off of a cliff, and the gas pedal didn't work when I pressed on it. And that's when it hit me. I was like, oh my gosh, what did you just try to do? And I looked at my phone, and somebody had spam called me because I turned off my location, and I didn't want anybody to know. I didn't want to be found. And it was one of my teammates, and she knew I was struggling, and she had texted me and said, I know, I feel like I need to talk to you right now, what's going on? And so I just want to emphasize how important it is to check on your friends when you feel they need checked on. If you have that prompting, you need to check on them because God has something greater that you need to help with. One thing I also wanted to say, so I'm taking a psychology is what I'm majoring in. And so I took a co-occurring class, which is when you struggle with mental health and substance abuse at the same time. And one of the first videos we watched, and it was about suicide. I don't remember what the bridge is called. It's a big red
Golden
one.
Gate Bridge.
Okay, yeah. They talked about how that was the place where most deaths occur. And there's this video of this guy who survived. And he talked about, he's like a very small percentage of survivors from there. Somebody had asked him to take a picture. They said, thank you. And they walked away. And he's like, that's how I know nobody cares because they just walk away. And then he jumped over the bridge. And when his hands left the rail, that's when he regretted his choice. That split second between the water and the rail is when he knew he did not want to do that. And that's all the survivors say, if they've survived from the water. And I feel like that's how I felt when the gas pedal didn't work. It's like reality hit me, and God was like, Shaylee, what did you just try to do? You're my child. You're needed, and you're loved, and you need to be here. And I look, and there was so much love around me. And so Geneva is my teammate's name, and so I called Geneva, told her what I had just tried to do, and her and my coach, they came. I drove back to the college. Took me about 20 minutes, but they came and met me there. And we sat in the car and we just talked about everything. And that's when I needed to talk. Sometimes you need to talk and sometimes you just need a hug. And I think that's also why it's important to ask your friends, do you need the listening friend, the advice friend, or the agreeing friend? Who do you need right now? Because everyone needs something different in their moments. And so I just talked with them and told them everything. But the feeling while talking to them, I was still very numb. I wasn't angry that I had just tried to end my life, and I wasn't sad. I wasn't happy that it didn't work. I just didn't know what to feel. It was like they had all gone away. And that night, Geneva stayed with me. The next day, I went to school, and I had a counseling appointment, but my therapist happened to be sick. And so I went and talked to my psychology teacher. Her name's Gina. She was also my advisor, and I got really close with her just talking about it in general in the past. And she could tell something was wrong. And I told her, because I just knew I needed to talk to somebody. And so I told her what had just happened, but that I still felt numb. That whole day, I still felt numb. I wasn't in touch with my emotions. And that's something I also think is very important now. I have to almost like putting yourself on a trial when you're thinking things and you're getting anxious and things are going on, it's like, how are you feeling right now, Shaylee? What's going on? Asking yourself questions. Because sometimes you can't identify it when you feel it, but if you ask and you think about it and take time to feel it, you can acknowledge what you're feeling. And so it's like, Shaylee, what's going on? Why do you feel numb today? And she asked me that, and I asked myself that because I still didn't know how to deal with that guilty feeling, and I didn't also know how to now deal with the new emotions of loss. I felt very lost. I talked with her, and we both decided it'd be good if I went to BHU, the Behavioral Health Unit in Glendive, Montana, and I didn't want to because I didn't have the best experience at BHC, but I still knew something's not right. I needed to go. So I went and I was admitted and I talked to a psychiatrist, and I was in there for 5 days, and those 5 days were life changing for me. So the first day it was just like, it was an evening, and I was just like, okay, well, I got to get comfortable with where I'm at. So getting comfortable in your situation. And then the next day it was a lot of classes. We did meditating in the morning, and then we did the group session, and then we would talk to our psychiatrist, and it was split up throughout the day. But that's when I started to recognize my emotions by taking time to sit with them and feel them. Each day just got better and better, and I ended up having, like, most of my softball team had came and visited me. I had people that, like, my roommates came that weren't on the team. I had my athletic director at the college. He came and visited me. My coach had stayed with me most of the time, the entire time, because she didn't want me to be alone. And her presence meant everything to me. I had so many visitors at the hospital. I had to send people away because they were like, we don't have enough room for all of you. People in my ward came and would bring me stuff, and some people would do the meditation with me in the morning. I had a friend, Ashley, she did the meditation with me in the morning with my coach and I. And then the other person who was staying there, and he was having his own invisible battles. But by talking with each other and doing things together and helping each other, we also gave each other insight that was able to help us find another reason to stay. Looking back at it, that was just how many people love you and will show up for you when you ask for help. It's a hard thing to do. It's hard to ask for help. And I think it's hard because we assume what they think they're going to say. I think society has put a thing where it's, oh, you just need, like, just go to therapy, talk it out, you'll be fine. Or just take your pills in the morning and you'll be okay. But those are only temporary for pain that feels permanent. So yeah, we talked and talked and talked and talked and just practiced coping skills and learned different ones. And you had to find one that worked for you. My favorite one is, if you, like, imagine this is your brain and there's a stop sign. I have a lot of thoughts that feel overwhelming when I feel anxious. And so the stop sign just comes through and it just pushes all your thoughts out. Sometimes when the thoughts keep coming back, I'll just restart the stop sign because it needs to leave. Those thoughts are going to take over sometimes. And even if it's not negative thoughts, it's still overwhelming. And so I would just push it and practice, and you close your eyes and you do that throughout the day if things are happening. Because coping skills are like a sport. You need to practice it to be good at it. You need to practice it so that when you're in the moments of panicking, you can do it. And it feels natural to you. So I was practicing a lot of those, and I found ones that worked for me to put in my toolbox, and I still use them all the time. Sometimes when I feel like I need to remember something and you're going to bed and you're like, I need to make sure I remember that, but I don't want to get up and write it, I'll put it on a sticky note in my head and put it on an imaginary fridge, and I still remember it in the morning. But then I don't have to worry because it's somewhere I put it. Mm-hmm. I put that thought somewhere, so it's not running around in my mind. When I got out, I was still struggling a little bit, and at that point decided it was time to go home. I think my spiritual health was declining and I was struggling a lot. And that's something I feel like is so important to me, is my relationship with my Heavenly Father and my Savior. And I came home because I needed to fix that. I needed to gain that relationship back with the person who knew me best. And so I came home. I left the thing I had been working towards since 12 years old, and I had to give it up to take care of myself. And sometimes we have to do that. We have to give up things to be able to take care of ourselves, because that's just how life works. You have to take care of you before you can take care of anything else. And so I came home. My parents were in Salt Lake for an anniversary, and they dropped their anniversary and came and picked me up. And that was also another thing, like, oh my gosh, my family loves me. They just dropped something. They said they didn't have to wait. They just came and picked me up the next day and drove 14 hours. And we got all my stuff and just moved and went home. And I felt very disappointed and lost for a while, but I also knew that that was an internal battle itself, was how I was feeling disappointed and lost. It wasn't true, but it felt like it. And so that was a battle I was having. But coming home and having a routine and doing all the creating a strong routine for me, like working out is really great for your mental health. Like Eric Wheeler, that's his way of coping. I think that's a way of coping for me too. I got back to working, and I'm a very social person, and so I like to keep myself busy. I feel like that's how I can stay away from isolating, is keeping myself busy. So I was working and um, going to the temple often, and I was talking with my stake president about how things were going, and just talking to people. It doesn't even have to be about mental health, but talking to people will help your mental health, because you can connect with people and you don't feel alone when you can connect with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess coming home, I got that routine, and then there was a lot of blessings that came. I ended up meeting my boyfriend, and he's amazing, and I decided to go to BYUI instead because I want to be close to the Spirit. And there's still going to be bad everywhere you go, but when you have strength in numbers, it's easier to succeed. I'll be close to my family and the people who I know. I know a lot of people love me, but the people I have a good relationship with, that I can talk about anything, are here. And so by putting myself first instead of my goals first of softball, then I was able to kind of find a routine and get back to a happy life.
I am so glad that you made yourself and your well-being a priority over everything. I feel so grateful to have you share your story with us today. You're a very amazing human. We had posted something on our social media this week about you have interactions with up to 100 people a day, and you never know what somebody's going through. And I feel like every time I see you, you're this smiling, happy-go-lucky. Your energy is just bright in such a good way, and you would never know the trauma in your past, but I don't feel like your light would shine as brightly if you didn't have that.
I agree.
So we just want to say thank you. Thank you.
Gosh, I don't even know what to say. I just think that the strength that you demonstrate is just so, it blows me away. Like for you to be only 19 and to have the knowledge that you have is so impressive to me. And I think that week after week, I'm just blown away by people. And for you to have been through so much in your life, it just shows me that you have so much to offer this world. And so I hope that if there's anything that you take away from this experience of being with us, I hope you feel validated in that you're an amazing human being that has been through so much. And because you've been through so much, you have so much to offer the people that are struggling, you know? And so I have learned so much from your experiences with you just sharing. So I hope you just know that we're so grateful for you being willing to come on to the podcast. It's been really great.
Yeah, I think, like I said when I texted you, it's important to talk about it, because people don't like the uncomfortable. But if we make this comfortable to talk about, then a lot more people are going to get help, because they're going to feel comfortable talking about it. And so even though in therapy it's hard to say the things you are thinking out loud, but just by saying it out loud to somebody, even if it's your Heavenly Father, like, it releases all that stress in your brain. I think it's important to talk about it, and I was glad that someone near me is able to also talk about it.
Well, Shaylee, thank you so much. We're just really grateful for you coming onto the podcast. We're very grateful for this experience. I feel like we learned a lot. So thanks for being so open with us.
Of course.
And thank you to our listeners for being here with us for another week. We feel your love and support, and we appreciate you so much for being here and for helping us make this subject something that we can talk about. So we will see you guys next week.
See ya.
See